Welcome to In the Now with Jim Swilley. This is part 3 of our series with Prophet Calvin Witcher. Would you please welcome him once again? Glad that he's here. If you're just seeing this part 3, please go back and watch the previous 2 parts to give you some context. We're talking about prophetic words. Specifically, our title is Seeing the Future, Creating the Future. I would tell you what we've been talking about, but we've been talking about everything. So,
everything and no thing.
So where we were last time, we were talking about prophetic words, we're talking about God. You were specifically talking about when God speaks, and sometimes it sounds like the voice of, it doesn't just sound like the voice of a mother or a father, it is the voice of them. They are alive. Like even, we may have talked about this one year before, but remember when Saul went to the witch of Endor, mm-hmm. which is where what's bewitched. Her mother's name was Endora. That's where that came from. Mm-hmm. But she was a medium, and she channeled the prophet, Samuel. Mm-hmm. Samuel the prophet, and allowed Saul to have a conversation with him. And it was what it was. I mean, Solomon was still alive, and Saul basically said, I need to know, what was it that you prophesied? And he couldn't get that in the temple. He had to go find a witch. That's interesting. And you know something else, I don't know if I ever told you this before.
Might be doing the part 4.
But years ago, and I don't want to eat any of your time, but years ago, this just made such an impression on me. I ran a branch of a Bible college just a few blocks from here. And that's how I met Robert Rutherford. He was a student in my 1981 class of New Life Bible College. And so back then we were very evangelical and going out in the streets and getting people saved and everything. And there were a lot of, right around here were a lot of cults and all kind of stuff. So at the end of the school day, a lot of the students were very zealous, would go to some of these places to try to get people delivered or whatever. One of them was the House of Ravenswood with a Wicca. It was down there on Moreland Drive. It's right next to the Starbucks I go to a lot. And so Robert and another pastor went there because they, in their mind at the time, and Robert would laugh about this now because we're so evolved from this now, but they were going to go try to get this woman delivered. So they go in, and the witch meets them and brings them in, and so they're talking, and she's like very gracious and sweet. Well, they start praying, and Robert starts praying in the Spirit, like speaking in tongues. Well, she knows what he's saying. Like they're thinking... Oh, yeah. They think that her head's going to explode. Like they're expecting demonic manifestation. Her head's going to spin. And she's like, oh, that's a beautiful language. That's a really... He said, you know what I'm saying? She says, yes, the language of love. It's a very old language. Mm-hmm. And she starts interpreting back to him what he's saying. Now, that you talk about messing with your tradition. You're like, you're not doing it right. Your head's supposed to be spinning. Demons supposed to be coming out of you when I say Shandala Bakaya Darasa. And she's like right with it. And I remember back then, that was one of those moments where your brain goes, I'm not there yet, but I think I just learned something that my future self is really going to understand that in a way that my current self can't quite comprehend. But something just shifted in me when you told me that, because I was taught that witches were of the devil and they're burned at the stake. Well, you read Galatians. Paul says, well, witchcraft is one of the works of the flesh. I mean, sometimes it's just having power over someone else. That's why we talk about casting a spell on someone. But it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. Well, the scripture says stubbornness is as the sin of witchcraft. Yeah, it is. Sometimes it can be. Just like religion can be horrible. There's all kind of things that can be positive, can be. Mm-hmm. You decide if you see it through the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if it's going to be. The fact is, it's neither good nor evil. It just is.
And you're right. It is a work of the flesh. It's something that you do with your hands. So even with magic, it is something that, thank you, it is something that you do very actively. But even the scriptures talk about work out your own soul salvation. If you want to argue the fact, even the scriptures talks about that you need to actually do witchcraft in a sense of working out the things that you need in your life. I can play that conversation with you as well. So it makes sense that even the witch would understand what was happening because she's working out her own soul salvation. Witchcraft, that's all witchcraft is being able to consciously work things in the natural to affect that which is coming forward or in your present state. I can understand that. This is why the scriptures even said a person that doesn't work doesn't eat. you don't do the magic, you don't get the manifestation.
Right. It's like
It's synonymous.
Did you ever do the thing where you say, "I'm going to read somebody's palm"? You see that
The M?
You see that M?
Yeah.
It means you're going to have money in your life. Turn it upside down. You see that W? It means you got to work for it.
I've never heard that one.
That's our prophetic word, and that's the thing about prophetic words that can be generic, and to say you've been through some stuff lately. Well, duh, everybody's been through some stuff. There's sometimes you feel like giving, but then there's other times, like you said something. We were joking last night. You said something to me, and you said, "I'm going to judge you for that." I said, "It didn't work. I'm judgment proof."
Oh,
I mean, this. Honestly, I don't even like to energize this kind of stuff. But day before yesterday, I don't ever look at my what you call your fan page, but I looked over there and somebody had they actually said, "You are a horrible blasphemer. I don't know how you look at yourself every day in the mirror, but one day you will face God and it will not be good." And I looked at it, I thought,
just laugh.
Wow, settle down, sweetie. And I was like, block. And it's like, there was a day that would have really messed me up, but I thought, I'd be called horrible blasphemer in a minute. Like, it was neither good nor bad. I thought, well, in your consciousness, in your reality, you see someone like me as a horrible blasphemer. So there's no point in me getting online with you and contending and showing you how many scriptures I know, because I'm not going to, you're under the spell of the religion that brought you up. So you got to work it out, and somehow we'll all end up at the same place. You're not even a bad person. It's why Jesus could rebuke the Pharisees and call them snakes and vipers and whitewashed sepulchres full of dead man's bones, and in the same breath say, the kingdom of God is within you. It's not either or. It's not us versus them. It's not whitewashed sepulchres go to hell. It's no, they just don't know yet that the kingdom is within them. And eventually, listen, it's going to set you free so much about your loved ones that you're concerned about. I'm not saying you should be blasé if they've got issues. I'm just saying they'll get it eventually.
They will.
You know, people say, please pray for so-and-so. Well, okay, I'm in agreement with you, but he'll get it. I mean, he may have to go through some turbulence. He may even have to bottom out, but he'll get it. And it's like last night, I said, well, we'll take you to your hotel. Where you going? He said, I'm at the Indigo Hotel. But when he said that, I didn't realize Indigo was a chain. He said that. I immediately thought he meant the one on Peachtree Street that's a couple of blocks from here. I said, oh, well, if that's where you are, we'll just take you. I said, I can pick you up in the morning. Well, we drive all the way here. He said, this isn't it. I said, where is it? Well, he looked. It was in Vinings, the one because that's what they had put on for people coming in town. And I said, you know what? It makes sense. I can see why you would do that. I just gave you a nice little tour of Atlanta, and
which I appreciate.
But the point is, we still ended up at your hotel. We could have gotten there.
Left there.
We could have gotten there 25 minutes earlier, but we still got there. I mean, it was what it was. Was it an aggravation? No, it was a lesson learned. Next time somebody says that, I will know to say, you mean the one on Peachtree Street, and not just assume that wasn't your fault. That was my fault. I should have said, what's the address? But I didn't. So it was a valuable lesson learned. We had a nice little drive.
We did.
I showed you the Fox Theater. We drove around. Then we drove right back to where we just were, inviting. But the fact is we got there, and everybody eventually will get there.
Yeah. Speaking of frustration, I love that. It's a good segue in bridging everything together. I see God, and when I say God, like collectively everything together, frustrated with us a lot. And here's why. Mostly because we're frustrated with us. If we're honest, most of us are very frustrated. We even if you have level of success, even with me, I'm like, well, I should be, the ambassador to Uganda right now, or I should be with President Trump as his spiritual advisor. Thoughts away. Or something like that. So even me, it's very much that Paulinian conversation of I have not yet obtained, but I press towards the mark. I think we live in a level of frustration, but it makes sense because I feel that God lives in a level of frustration. In this case, if I had to say the prophetic has one bad side to it, is that when I see people, I rarely see where they are. It's just very rare, maybe 1% of the time. I am always seeing the potential, the possibilities, the paths to get there. So I am about 6 years or 7 years or 10 years down the road. And then I see what they're saying, or I hear what they're saying, I see where they are, and then it becomes very frustrating because I'm like, well, do you realize that 2 years from now, we'll be having a whole different conversation.
And that's the point of that's why I brought up the scripture
Right.
new. That's precisely the point. Because here's the thing, you only have X amount of time. And just because it's been prophesied over you doesn't mean it's an absolute. You've got to make the prophecy come to pass.
Absolutely.
Because if you just say, oh, so-and-so prophesied it was going to happen, and you kick it in neutral, baby, it ain't going to happen. I know
Right.
people that have been waiting for 30 years for a prophetic word to happen. The prophetic speaks to the potential. Very, very
It speaks to the
important
potential,
that you
and I will say that's what I've, especially at the, train
'cause
young prophets. 'Cause
You
young
can go
prophets
through
don't
your
get this.
expiration date.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can say, "Well, I was supposed to." I used to say, "Well, I can't die till all my prophetic words are fulfilled." And now I think I'm about to turn 60. I gotta make some of these. But like I can't just say,
Right.
"La la la," all these prophecies are going to come true. Well, baby, you got some time. You got to make
Get
some
a gear.
prophecies come to pass.
Right.
It's like, well, who is it? Is it Emerson that said build castles in the air, and then, or was it? It was one of those two guys. Either he says build castles in the air and then build foundations under them. Anyway, somebody look that up.
So yes, I see the prophetic very much as I'm in the future, God's in the future, really trying to say, come over here. Here are a couple of possibilities. Now, here's the thing I like about this. While it's not set in stone, there are some things that are pretty much concrete. We made a contract with the universe before we came here. I can give you a really good example. How many of you, by show of hands, want to be a pirate when you grow up? One. It's always one in the group. One. Pretty much no one raised their hand. That's not a potential path for anyone here. You don't have a conscious understanding of it. You've never seen it. There's no revelation of it. There's no path of attainment. So it doesn't even make sense for me to prophesy, in 4 days, you're going to be a pirate. Maybe if you go down to the store and buy a costume, we can make that prophecy come true. But we know that's not what we're talking about. So anytime that I speak or Spirit speaks to you, Spirit always speaks to things which are possibilities. How many of you, by a show of hands, want to be wealthy in the next 2 years? Now, let me define that even more. How many of you in the next 2 years want to be making 6 figures a year? Now, this is a good example because this is how prophecy can shift. Now, there's probably someone that didn't raise their hand because they're like, well, I'm already making 6 figures a year. So it's no longer prophecy, it is present. So even though it's a prophecy, to the general mass, it's very universal truth. To one other person, I'm already living in that. So it's different. Versus someone else, as soon as I said $100,000, what you started seeing, you didn't see, a cash or a stack of $100,000. You started seeing a house and how it would affect your family and all of the things that you would do with it and the vacations you would go on. So if you are able to think of that, it means that part of the future has already been written, or else you wouldn't have an imagination of it. Just like no one in this room has ever thought about, I want to be a pirate when I grow up. You've never thought about wearing the whole eye patch. It's not a part of your conscious path. So in that, I tell people that if you have the crazy gall to imagine it, everything's already laid out for you. The people, the businesses, the situation that you stopped at the red light. At this time, the accident happened. You got out to help them, and they tended to be a millionaire. And all these things are already present. The frustrating thing about the prophetic is that if I can get you out of now into the awareness of now and out of your past into this now state and get you focused on what you want, it's not even... it's beyond faith, because I'm just telling you to just keep walking. Just keep going.
What's so amazing about how prophecy works, I've used Oprah a lot as an example of this, but I've said most women that came from where Oprah came from don't end up like her.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's rare for a African-American woman who was born in the 50s in the rural South who was sexually assaulted to become a billionaire mogul. And you know what changed for her? She didn't even have that much of an exceptional childhood. But she said when she was in 5th grade, she gave an oral report, and she just sold it. She just spoke really well or whatever. And she loved her teacher, and her teacher said, you ought to consider going into broadcasting. You sound really good when you talk. And she said, nobody had ever said anything positive to me. I mean, all I had ever heard was, it sucks to be you. And then suddenly somebody said, you could, just that simple thing, you kept everybody's attention, you spoke well, you had a good stage presence. She said, my whole life changed after that. just to show you that, wow, that was within somebody's, that could be in a lot of people's potential. I'm not saying everybody has a future in broadcasting, but I love the idea. And what you said a minute ago when you said you nearly got emotional, I said this last week. I was listening to a interview with Streisand, and somebody was saying, did you always know you were going to be this iconic megastar? She said, yeah. She said, even things as simple as, I hated to make up my bed when I was a little girl, and I thought, I'll have to become rich and famous and pay somebody to make up my bed. She said, I know that sounds really simple, but I just thought, well, I'll just have to do that. She said, and yet I'm riddled with self-doubt. She said, I've always known I was this person. But she said, I second-guess a lot of stuff, too. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting that you have the tension between those two things, which is why you need prophecy to pull you back into remember who you are. Remember who you are. Because every word gets tested. You know, even you were talking about the thing about prophets. I remember I was with, I know this is name dropping, but I was with Kim Clement and Mark Sharona one time, and they were joking about what it means to be a prophet. And they said that when you're a prophet, you don't see what's going on in your life. You see what's happening in everybody else's life. So when you meet somebody, you go, well, you're fine. How am I? I don't know that that's true for every prophet, but it was true for them.
You know, it's not easy living with the prophet. It's definitely not easy being with one. So I can attest to some of that.
And that may not be monolithic. That might not be true for everybody. That was because I know some things people say about pastors or bishops. I think, well, that's not really true for me. I mean, that's not my reality. But I love the idea of speaking to potential. Yeah. We're coming to a close here. This has been amazing. I have loved everything that you've said, and I'm so glad we get to record it, because sometimes, you know, if you just say it and then later you think, well, they said so many good things. What were they? The great thing about this is you can go back and look at it, you can pause it, you can rewind it, or whatever. And these words, there might be somebody, we're recording this in what we know of as the year 2018, but there may be somebody watching this in 2030 that it's going to change their life, and they're going to change the world. We might not even in our lifetime see what this day is going to do. It may have long-reaching effect. And when you start understanding your eternalness, I mean, I want to get as far as I can in my 120 years as I can. That's good. But beyond that, eventually when I do check out here, I believe that things like this will live on. My books will live on. My paintings will live on. Your words will live on. Yeah. That's why it's good. I was talking to Jonah last night we were talking about why I take so many pictures. And I said, every day goes by so fast, I just want to capture it. I want to remember. I want to memorialize every day. One day last week, Olivia she was eating a popsicle, and she was just, like skipping around. And I was taking a picture of her. And she said, Poppy, why do you take so many pictures of me? I said, I know you're too young to understand this, but this afternoon, you look like this. I'm going to blink, and you'll be 21. You won't look like this again. So I'm sorry I'm invading your privacy, but Poppy's going to take a picture, because I'm going to remember what it looked like when you had your hair in braids and you were eating a popsicle, and it was on this very mundane Monday afternoon in the year 2018. I didn't say all that to her, but I'm just saying, that's why I want to freeze it. And that's why today I want to capture this word. And that's so amazing when the spiritual, the supernatural comes together with, maybe technology is supernatural. John said he saw a world that didn't have any sea. Mm-hmm. So we have a world now that, somebody could be streaming this on the other side of the planet as we're saying this. Okay. So technically there's no sea anymore. Absolutely. Jackie was just saying broadcasting means something. It's not just cast your nets. It's cast your internets. That's some good stuff.
That's good. Spirit just brought this back to my remembrance, because I don't think we actually covered it, but it was said about worshiping God. Yeah. And I don't think we unpacked that. The concept of worshiping God, I've had to really reframe, over the years, because we both were brought up in the sense of there's an external God, you must worship it because it's, low self-esteem and all this other stuff. I've come to really reframe that in so many different ways, in that I think we all need encouragement. I think we all need vision. I think we all need focus. The sinner, the saint, the witch, the whatever. That we all need something to be able to say, you did a good job. Worship allows for us to get outside of ourselves and step into the future and say, wow, you did a good job. God, thank you for setting these things up for me.
Yes,
And
sir.
though I am not aware of it yet,
it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, me, for having the courage to have faith to step forward. So even as you're worshiping God, you're worshiping the collectivity of all that's happened. I'm worshiping the driver that stopped and said hi. I'm worshiping, the pastor that said this. I'm worshiping this other person. So God becomes this really interesting thing. So I can say you are great and you do miracles. I can say you are holy because it has nothing to do with, oh, God has low self-esteem. It's to say that we did this.
Yeah.
Look at us. We took this path and we succeeded. We could have stopped. You are worthy. We worship you.
I love it.
That's and it's great because am I worshiping God or is God worshiping me for actually taking the step forward?
Even just he's saying the words blessed assurance. The word assurance has a great vibration
Right.
on it. I felt empowered saying, I am assured that Jesus is mine. I mean, my definition of him might have changed. All the more reason I have a blessed assurance. It might not be the Jesus you follow, but I got a blessed assurance that my Jesus is mine. You can
Right.
enjoy him if you want to, but that is the fourth element.
foretaste.
A foretaste of glory divine. What?
What?
Don't make me slap you right here on live streaming.
Okay, slap the bitch.
Don't bish slap me. All right. Anyway. Yeah, I
Only
said
here.
it because you were
Only
already
here.
thinking it. I just said it. This has been this has been so good, and it will not. I prophesy this will not be the last time that Calvin Witcher
will
is
come
with
back.
us. Would you please tell him thank
I
you
will
for
come
being here today? Thank you for tuning in to In the Now with Jim Swilley. Please check out everything else on our YouTube page, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Next time.